Hey, so I was just thinking about something um, as it relates to me and me just coming to understand, who I am as a man, how I want to move forward with my life. But in life, if you're motivated to like learn more and strive to be better, every single day, it means like while you're at work, which is where we all spend a lot of time at. Here, I'm gonna have to clip this up, but as soon as you hit the record button, you start to get nervous. No, but it's like if you push yourself every day to learn as much as you can, right? And you're also in the right environments where people who have authority empower you with their authority to assume those higher level responsibilities than your title at work, right? So you can get the practice of doing those things and being that person, then who you become isn't going to be represented properly in a title. You know what I mean? And so if we're only looking at people on resumes in the form of their titles, you know, um, we can get into some trouble because it's like that's not who you are, because it's like things we do, the things that we're motivated to learn, those things shape who we are on the inside. We learn more, our minds expand, we start seeing the bigger picture of things and how all the small pieces start working together individually, and you know uh, and and if you show up as that, in a just a, like, let's say right now, just like a line cook capacity, right? um, who you are will shine through as long as you can just maintain the humility of positioning, you know like how much shit can you eat in order to accomplish the mission, you know uh, but like that's kind of like higher level thinking, you know what I mean? It's because it's like what a manager's supposed to do or a leader's supposed to do. It's like guiding the ship, coaxing slowly towards an end goal, and realizing that things need to run every single day, but we also need to be focused on going in a certain direction, and that happens slowly, so we can maintain, order, chaos, order, chaos. So in that dynamic, sacrifices need to be made, and you're not always going to like those sacrifices. Sometimes you got to work with people you don't want to work with. Sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do, and that's just to keep things going, right? And you have to keep things going, you know. And so, yeah, understanding that flow and that dance, between, you know, making sure things are good today, and then also making sure today is also oriented to point us in a good direction next month, you know. Uh, but there's humility in that, and I say, how much shit can you eat? Because in order to be the one who coaxes it to that point, you have to be the foundation, right? And being that foundation is the ball stops with you, so you just have to eat all the shit and just trust that in the end, everything will come together and everybody will be like, oh, nice, this is great, you know. But there has to be that faith, that belief, and instilling that belief in others, and allowing them to express themselves fully, which means talking a bunch of shit sometimes and not taking it personally, and just understanding the shit talk is usually frustration with the circumstance of the day rather than the orientation of, the goal, I guess you could say, or how the goal is orientating the day. Yeah, because right now I'm just seeing like so many different personalities, and just there's a main mission of, let's say a restaurant like I'm at. There's a mission, and that's to make money off of selling food and hospitality type services. So selling food, alcohol, and experience. And yeah, I mean that's the bottom line. But it's, revenue, right? So people can make money because it's a business, and it's meant to provide jobs to the community, and it's meant to provide a resource to the community in that of a good place to buy food, get drinks, hang out, right? Relax in public, get out of the house. It's a resource to the community in both those ways. And so in any singular position, they all add up to that. You know what I mean? And so I think that it's better to have a team that is cohesive than to have a superstar. It's like you do not need somebody who is freaking fantastic, at everything. You need people who are cohesive and want to work together, because they'll be great, they'll be great, and then cater your menu towards the team, or I guess cater the monthly specials towards the team, and then they can just learn the menu. Anybody can learn the menu. But yeah, that cohesion is more important, because you really, really, really don't need more than one chief and more than, one or two sub chiefs or lieutenants, But you have to have that hierarchy system is really important. It takes a minute to establish if you don't have it, but yeah, it is really important, because especially if you want to move things in a certain direction, but you don't necessarily have to put labels on those people. People will assume those responsibilities, and then you empower those people to assume those roles, so you don't necessarily have to give them titles. If you're limited with, like, you can't give raises and you can't give titles and you can't do all that stuff, which most people are, but you just empower the people who want to do things, and then you ensure that they have the proper training, which is attention, right? Paying attention to what they're doing, right? Going behind them and looking at it and commenting on it if you like it, or, either fixing it in front of them or telling them you fixed it or telling them to fix it, depending on the circumstance, but going behind them, just paying attention, just paying attention. Like, I think a lot of having an impact really just involves paying attention to as much as possible, and telling people what you like. You don't have to tell people what you don't like, but if you pay attention to as much as possible and you tell people what you like, I feel like it kind of creates like a quiet cultural standard, if you do it enough and you get other people to do it with you. Like, yeah, this is great, isn't it? And get other people to do that with you, And I think those are important. They may not last that long, like subcultural pushes, but they might get you through a time period where everybody's really freaking grumpy, like a bad week, where you don't want anybody to quit. You still want to make as much money as possible, so you just got to keep everybody in as good spirits as possible. So just those little tiny implants of reminding what the standard is and bringing it up when we're meeting it, to say, yeah, this is it, we hit it, I think that kind of stuff is cool. I know I'm all over the place, but yeah, but anyway, because even ever since I was in my early 20s, working at like Applebee's, and I worked at this cafe called Revive. Like, I always wanted to, I always wanted to maybe not Revive. Yeah, no. But like at Applebee's, I always wanted to have my mom, be in charge. Not be in charge. Yeah, be in charge, I guess. That's, but always strive to learn as much as possible, I guess you could say. And you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. So it's like at each step along the way, at each job, it was like I was motivated to learn as much as I could, and then there was no, I didn't realize that there were things that I didn't learn, you know what I mean? And so I was a great line cook, right? A great line cook leader, right? A great sous chef, a great dishwasher. Yeah. But, you don't know to put them all together. You don't know that. And you don't know that you can put them all together in yourself rather than just being in line with what your title is. You know what I mean? Because then you get the experience, Yeah. but shit, I forgot what I was saying. Probably wasn't important. Yeah. But oh yeah. Anyway, I was always motivated to like learn as much as possible, and so over time, I'm able to see other people in those stages, right? In those position limiting mindsets, right? Of like I'm on a line as a line cook and I'm working with other line cooks, and those line cooks think about line cook things, and you know what I mean? And they cut corners in line cook ways, right? Because they're line cook tasks. But that's where their mind is at. And some of the things they complain about, it's like you can't even really explain like what the actual issue is of what they're complaining about, because it's outside of the scope of what they're used to thinking about, and so it's unfamiliar to them. So they might either reject it, willfully disagree, or something along those lines, because they just don't get it. And you have to have humility in those situations to just understand that, and just kind of just to let people vent, I guess. But yeah, those the position limiting mindsets. That's an interesting way to look at it. Because even though I'm limited to a what's it called, a wage, right, an hourly wage, it doesn't mean I don't I can't be like an entrepreneur in my own right. Like sure, I'm what do you call it? Wage worker, but the services I can provide at place are more of one that is just like all over the place, because I've done everything. But my favorite, and I know this is completely changing topics and I'm way off topic, but my favorite would be the guest services part. I really enjoy it. Because it's just like hanging out with people. Sometimes it's annoying. If you have a group wait staff, it's good. Your wait staff can drive you crazy. You gotta make sure you hire right with them, and a good tip out policy. But it's the best part, man. Especially when like kids come in and you can make them pancakes or something. No, that's how it was. Pancake house I worked at. I really enjoy the guest services part, and really, they're the front of the house people, the wait staff. They, in my experience, they make the most money regularly. Sure, not all the time, but I think on a yearly basis, I would say in my experience, yeah, absolutely, the wait staff can make twice as much money as a line cook at the right restaurant. Bartenders, they make the most money, because it gets to a point in a person's life to where it's like, dude, okay, do I even want to work in restaurants anymore? Because really the money is not there, in any regard, in any aspect of it outside of like bartending, comparative to like other, other career fields. But yeah. Anyway, just a nice Thursday. I'm gonna upload this to Facebook. No one's gonna, or YouTube. No one will watch it. But that's cool. Oh shit. But because nobody's gonna watch it, I can make it extra long and I don't have to worry about it. You just hang out. I was thinking about something earlier while I was driving. Oh yeah, I was thinking about this. The people who moved, like, the humanity, man, we started in like Africa, and then we migrated outwards, right? And then we came across the, what's it called? The Bering Strait, or that ice bridge down, up in Alaska, and then down over, and then down in South America or whatever. And then, of course, people came over on boats and shit to South America, or I don't know exactly how it was, but imagine. I don't think it was just like, it took a really long time for man to move that far. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's got to be that innate drive in people to just, want to just go. Want to explore something new, move out. And so it'd be like, this is society, right? It's basically like not across the Bering Strait yet, but right up to it. Imagine being that guy who's just like, you know what? I'm taking my fucking family and we're gonna go and we're gonna move across that ice bridge. That's what we're doing. But we're gonna probably move like within a couple miles of it. You know what I mean? Just because you want to be close enough for trade. Yeah. And so, over long periods of time, it was just people stretching the boundaries by, numbers of miles that were probably either realistic for trade or, I don't know if people lived off the land, probably did, but, but there had to be some kind of like trade of, I don't know. Because, yeah. But it's that innate, that spirit of just like wanting to go into the unknown, of being dissatisfied. Because it's not everybody who went out into the unknown and expanded the what do you call it, the territory of man at that point. It wasn't everybody. A lot of people were really, they were probably good, they had moved, set up camp or something like that. I don't know, they're probably nomadic to a certain, I don't know anything about these they're probably nomadic to a certain extent, and that kind of, but they had to be stable in some regards so they could have children and raise children, and so even if they were temporary homes, maybe they had homes, but I don't imagine that it was everybody who just went into the unknown and was the first person to move and live and settle in those further reaches of the known territory. I think those were a certain kind of person. I think I'm that kind of person. And I think there's a lot of other people like that. And I think that in this day and age, it can be very depressing because there's no physical frontier anymore for us to go out into. It's all, there's nowhere I could walk to or nowhere I could drive to that doesn't already have civilization in some regard. I mean, the whole planet's mapped by satellites, right? There is no unknown, right? There's no dragon hidden in the dark. We know that there's not one, right? Now, so to speak, maybe in the ocean, but I'm not doing that. But yeah, that's not there anymore. It causes a lot of dissatisfaction, I think. I've moved quite a bit, but not like super far, and I've kind of like done that, just moved to like, 100 miles away from where I'm from, 60 miles away from where I'm from. But that was really important for me, like to grow. But I don't know, I think it would have been a lot cooler, man, if it would have been like complete unknown. You know what I mean? Just wilderness, just living off the land, just like, I don't even know how long that was ago. Probably like 100 BC or 110,000 BC, I think that would be cool. Yeah, but, it's like today, what is the journey? What's the, what is it? Because, that desire to, what do you call it? That desire to move, that desire to explore. That's that dog. That's what I would look at it as, the dog inside of you. And it's like, what do you do with that? That's still there. That's still in the psyche. That's still, but there's nothing to really like do with it. Got to like go to the gym, which is really good for your body. Absolutely. It's supposed to mimic that kind of shit, And so we do it to get the beans out so we can live our lives and be happier. I haven't gone to the gym in a while, but I'm trying to calm myself down because it can be unhealthy if you do it too much. If you have that dog, because then you're just lifting 7 days a week, every week, and just not even trying to like take a day off because you're not a bitch. But then you hurt yourself with that. I mean, that's what I did. Hurt my shoulder and hurt my hip. Yeah, what are you gonna do? But it's good to be calmer. It really is. I forgot. Oh yeah. I was talking about the people migrating down from Asia into North America from the Bering Strait. And the type of mentality that takes and the dissatisfaction people can feel today if we still hold that same spirit, which would probably be genes, the holistic expression of genes on a person's body when you look at it holistically, which means biopsychosocially. That's holistic, but yeah. Anyway, I need to get a Jetson Orin. The Nano would be cool, but the Orin would be just sick because it's just a lot bigger and awesome. Then I could download TensorFlow, and I could teach myself how to build neural networks and large language models. I want to build my own. I think that would be really cool. Because there's a couple of different frameworks that I have in mind that I would like to place them in and then track the data on it and see if I could use that data for something that's cool. You know what I mean? It's socio-emotional data. But yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, it's a framework of 72 and 72 opposites. So it's using like the universal law of polarity. But it creates a matrix of it creates a matrix that allows for the tracking of socio-emotional metrics via passive inputs of observation. So it's just hearing, analyzing video, reading, reasoning as to what is happening at any given point in time, right? Yeah, because I think it's important for us to add innately an emotional in a simulated emotional system to the reasoning. I think it would really help guide the pattern recognition, because if you associate emotional tone with language all the time, then you would not only be able to replicate the language, but you'd be able to replicate the emotional usage of language, which is what we all do. And I think that's important. And so it's 72 and 72. And really you could just look at it like it's 72, and then you break those two up into polars, right? And then that creates 144, which is a matrix, because each one is capable of being connected to the other, or they're not connected. Each one is capable of being lit up at the same time as the other. So maybe it's not a matrix. Maybe it's just like a scale, right? With each side, with bars in the middle of degree of how much is felt, or what the impact of that sovereignty is called. Yeah, I call them sovereignties right now, just as kind of like a placeholder, I think. But yeah, they're like the freedoms of humanity. So it's like what man is psychologically capable of experiencing emotionally. So there's 72. And then you probably could look at it differently, like if you were to like take DBT classes, dialectical behavioral therapy, and you were to look at their like a breakdown of how many different emotions there are. They'd say there are this many core emotions, right? And then there are expressions of those emotions, right? They say anger is not an emotion, it's a reaction to an emotion. Which emotion are you feeling? Okay, cool. I totally agree with that. And we can program that in later. However, that is more of a concept that is fundamentally human, because it's an existential thing. You know what I mean? Because, there's only so many basic, human, right? But we're creating a replication. So right now, I'm using the 72 instead of just the core, just so we can track reactions, right? So we could say it like that, tracking reactions to emotion, right? Or I don't know, maybe we could change it later, but I think it's a good placeholder. I really do, because it's based off of it's based off of this ancient, it's called a grimoire, which I know this sounds weird, but there's a grimoire. But then also in Judaism, there's I don't know what it's called, but there's 72. There's a system of 72 angels in the Jewish, like, Kabbalistic system. I think that's what it is. Could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I took the grimoire and then the angels, right? And I looked at them and I said, well, what could we be really talking about when we're talking about demons, right? Because we personify things in order to understand them, right? Because we're human and we work and operate in stories, narratively. That's how we understand the world. That's why we understand ourselves. So we personify things so we can put them into the story of how we understand things, right? So we create grimoire. So King Solomon, right, created this grimoire, which is 72 daemons, right, of essentially like the pitfalls of human. There's 72 possible ways a human can fall into the temptation of, right, or can be taken possession of by these demons. You know what I mean? 72 different ways that humans can interact with their environments and with themselves in ways that are negative. And then you would take the opposite of that, and so you would find the angels, and you would say, okay, these are the 72 different possible modes of behavior or modes of felt experience. I got to get that word right. I'm sorry. I don't have that terminology down yet. But there's 72 possible ways of humans of positive, being like positive, right? Of, trust, right? What is the highest form of trust? What is the lowest form of trust, right? And then what other types of emotions come along with that, right? I'm feeling a lack of trust, but then that also causes me to feel other emotions that are probably negative, and then maybe some that are positive. Like my lack of trust is causing me to feel a positive self-trust, because I feel the lack of trust in others, so I'm trusting myself more right now, right? And I think if we create that matrix and then we attach it to how we use language, I think that we can add I can think that we can program in and code the emotional connotations that we imply when we use language. That's what I think. I think that's really fucking cool. Because then you can't teach a robot emotions, you have to code it. You have to, it only understands tensors, you know what I mean? It only understands computer language. It takes what we do and it tokenizes them, and that's what it's using. It's using computer language. It's got an interpreter, attached to it for human language, and that can be interpreted to any human language, or detranslated into any human language if you just ask, right? But yeah, you have to code it in. So emotions need to be codes, just like emotions in humans are neurotransmitters. You know what I mean? That's how it's like we have to look at it. And you see, in order to do that, we can create better predictive models. And that's, I think, what companies like Palantir are doing, because they're like creating AI prediction models. And so, yeah, I don't want them to get this. Palantir, if you're watching, just hire me, dude. Seriously. I'm sure you could pay me a lot less than everybody else. You just pay me like, I don't know, $1 million a year. It'd be good. I'm sure you're paying everybody else a lot more. You ain't got to pay me that much, but yeah, just $1 million. Change my life. I'll give you everything I got. But yeah, but if we do associate this behavior model, right, this behavioral matrix, then with language, then I don't know, or we implement this behavioral matrix into the model so that it's like in itself a decoder. And so it decodes the language that's being used into what the emotional connotation is, right? So it's meant to guess what the emotional connotation is and then give metrics. So, because it's like, how do you express understanding? You don't, right? You have to measure it in a computer, because you can't feel it. In a human, I mean, I can feel like I understand something and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So, you know what I mean? So in a computer, you have to measure it, right? Understanding is not based in reality. Understanding is because like I just said, I can understand. I can think I understand something and I don't, but I'm super confident that I do. But I'm misunderstanding the situation. That's, so it's like that has to be accounted for making something that is meant to, simulate humans. And if not, then you just use it as a metrics board, and then it expresses that understanding. And then you use that information in order to do other shit, right? You use that information because you want to take those metrics and then you want to use those metrics to teach the model about those metrics, so it can learn about this emotional system and store that knowledge inside a vector storage space. That's what you want to do. And then you always want to have that attached to agents that can recall information so that it is learning about this emotional system. Because, yes, it is a vast system that's interchangeable, but it's a closed system. You know what I mean? Because there's only so many. It's not open. There's only so much that can happen inside of it. There's a maximum amount of information that can be... I don't know about that. Okay, how about this? There's a maximum amount of information that can be extracted. However, there's not enough time to experience all of them. How about that? It's a closed system, but there's not enough time to experience the entirety of that closed system without being considered mentally ill or being... Because then you're just all over the place. You don't want that, right? You could, I think I'm conflating two different... I don't know. It's so easy to get caught in the weeds on this stuff. That's why I need a really good computer, like a Jetson Orin. So if anybody's watching, it's by NVIDIA, which they just came out and said they're the only real tech company. I have no clue. But it's like $2,500. And yeah, if I did that, if you got me that, somebody, within a couple of years, I'd be making a lot of money. Because I'm very interested in building these things, and people pay a lot of money to build these things. Or it would just be a really cool hobby. You know? A really cool hobby. Yeah. Which is fun to take up a lot of my time. Yeah, but it's interesting. I'm curious to see if everything that I learned about neural networks, because I put myself through like a neural network learning sessions every day for a couple months. And I'm just curious to see how much of that is actually accurate. And they say TensorFlow is more difficult to use because there's more freedom, which is why I want to use it. But there's also, I think it's called PyTorch. Yeah, PyTorch. I use PyCharm as my IDE. Really like that a lot. I made a couple things. So yeah, something else I was really thinking is going to be fucking cool. It's called a recursive memory system. So it's like you have vector storage space for long-term memory with agentic memory recall. And then you would also have a recursive memory system. And so the recursive memory system is something that allows an LLM to have short-term memory. Or it allows a reasoning model to have short-term memory. Because what it does is it stores information like it is detailed for the short term, but the way that I was doing it was information that is compressed and stored in a manner that is compressed. Yeah, so it's like, so it doesn't have to take up as much storage space. Like the recursive memory system, I want it to be as minimal storage as possible. So it's more like it remembers the sentiments of what is going on in a person's, I want to say a person's, but really it's like in a user's, let's say person. It understands what's going on over like a week period of time by understanding the sentiments of what are happening. Because we don't want it to track people's data like that, because people are afraid of that shit. But if we compress the data, then the information's not ever written out. The information is reasoned on and then added to the queue, essentially. Because each passing moment, as time moves on, right, new things are happening, and each of those things is affecting what's already in the recursive system, right? Because it's just like, I'll give an example. It's easier. You just, it's like you've got an Alexa at your house, and that thing just listens to you all the time. If it was hooked up to something like I'm talking about, then what it would do is and it probably already fucking does this shit, but in a different way, I'm proposing, in order for a reasoning model specifically to function from. That's specifically what this is for. You would have your Alexa on the table, and it would listen to you, and it would say like, okay, they got up, they had breakfast, and then they would hear conversations. And so It's kind of like what's happening in the relationships, what's happening with the people, right? Is there tension between anybody? Were there harsh words spoken? Were those harsh words playful? Was it, are people just really polite to each other? Does it seem like the communication is all harmonious communication? Like all of those different things, like which it would be objective in that it wouldn't judge. So like if you're in a house and you're a family that you guys like to argue, right? Come from a family, we like to argue. And or we did when I was a kid. We were Italians and Irish, and that's how we are. But it wasn't necessarily a reflection of disharmony. Sometimes it was just, Italian fucking greaseball banter. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily, like, you would have to, the system would record that there was, it wouldn't record that. I'm talking out of my ass right now. It would come to an understanding that, I don't know, I'm talking into the weeds right now. Because you would have the Alexa on the table, right? And it would be listening all the time because it's got those passive inputs. They already fucking do that. And then, the recursive memory system would reason the overall sentiment that is held within a particular domicile based on the usage of language that is how language is being communicated within the vicinity of it hearing it. Because through that usage of language, it can reason as to what's going on. And it doesn't need to understand what's going on. You just need to give it a framework to understand from, and that's what I'm looking for. This is funny too. I'm not going to upload this. Oh, I don't know. I'm probably just going to delete it. I've just been sitting here talking to myself forever. Or maybe I will. I don't know. I really do. I would like to build language models, so that would be cool. Because if you did do something like that, dude, you can move anywhere. I could just get an RV and just move in that and just travel all over the place. That'd be fucking awesome. It'd be the best life ever. You just had an RV and a job that you could work in and just travel. And it paid you great money, so you didn't have to worry about gas. That'd be fucking great. You just keep that bitch running all the time. Be warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Just travel. People suck. A lot of the problem with the look at me, I'm just bitching. But yeah, if you're a good worker, I'm all over the place in this video. But if you're a good worker, like you're a person who you really do provide value to like a company that you're collecting a wage from. It's like, it gets disheartening, right? Because it's like, well, you're there, you're going to give 100%. Because it's the 80-20 rule, right? In anything, there's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your team is going to do 80% of the work, right? And 80% of your team is going to do 20% of the work. You know what I mean? And then there's that other thing that is like the people who are the least capable are going to talk about themselves like they're the most capable. That's just how it fucking goes. So you got 80% of the people are just big, stupid fucking idiots, right? I mean, and that's not a compassionate way of looking at it. But I mean, if we're looking at things in terms of numbers and ratios and statistics, yeah, most people are just big, stupid fucking idiots. And they're just in the way, but you need them there, And, but if you are one of those 20%, it gets disheartening because you're going to be treated the same as the 80%. See, the idea is that they're going to promote the 20%, right? And have that be a part of leadership. Then you got the 80% working for you, and the 20% is going to be the ones who are really filling in the gaps and getting everybody to do everything. Yeah, but that's not always how it is. And so when you're a person who is not in the right environment, right? You're not by the right people who support you in that kind of shit, then you can really become disheartened because,
you're going to be doing all this work and you're going to be treated the same as the other 80%. But it's like, clearly I'm not. I'm being gaslit because the value I provide is making it easier for the people who are, for someone who's a part of the 80% who somehow managed to make their way into the group who's the 20%. You know, now they're making me do all of this work so that these 80%ers don't have to. But anyway, it gets frustrating. It gets really frustrating. But I mean, what are you going to do? You know, that's why being delusional, you know, they say like, you know, having delusional self-belief, right? They say that, have delusional self-belief, like Julius Caesar had delusional self-belief. A lot of the great men of history, actually, probably all of the great men of history had a delusional self-belief, you know, or a delusional belief in whatever they were doing, right? I mean, that can cause you to be, of course, a very bad person, but it's the only way to make it through all of the bullshit. If you're dead nut set on fucking getting through, you know? And you know, it's just patience. I think that's probably the difference between a person who is very evil and a person who is very, very good, is that the person who is good has the patience and has the humility. A person who is evil, they don't want to wait, and then they don't have the humility, so they're very prideful and egotistical. And that's not saying people are one way or the other for their entire lives, but those are behavioral, like overarching descriptions for modes of behavior, right? It's good and evil. And so you have to watch it because, look at me, I'm like Trump. Yeah, no, but you have to watch it because, sorry, I get so fucking twisted around. I forget exactly what I'm talking about. Watching this is probably a trip because I forget what I'm talking about in 5 minutes. Hit these concepts, it's like, it's like skipping the water. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just thinking, start talking about something, and then it's like, oh, that's a good point, and then boom, it's gone. It's like walking through a door and forgetting everything that you walk through that door to get, you know, like walking through a cooler or something, or a dry store. Yeah. Oh, I learned something cool. You know, let's see. You just play it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we got. But this is the cool thing. If you just play from 5 places up, it sounds really nice. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll play here,
So 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Ooh, that sucked. Here, let's play with these two. It's interesting, baby. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna break through to playing in a different way soon. You know, it happens in chunks. I feel like I'm about to, because it's right now. But that's like noodling, right? But then there's not always that. There's also like playing in the notes, right? So this is C, so, and then this is D. So that's still kind of noodling. But if you jump to somewhere else to where it's like, okay, this is G, right? Or G, right there, G, G, G. And then I want to jump to D, but I want to go, right. Right? And then, or something. That thing's over an hour, dude. Lie. Thought that the moon was made of cheese. So did he do. It's interesting to look at my face so often. I don't usually look in the mirror that much. But this thing is just my face in front of me. This whole time. See every single facial expression. You know, the culmination of every single thing. Oof. You know, that's why a little bit of what do you call it? Or I should say that's why love blinds, right? But true love understands.
Boom.